We are back for another episode, and surprise, surprise, the co-host who said that she would be here way more this year than past years technically is true. If you count the numbers she's been here versus the ones she hasn't been here, that is technically true, but she's been missing a lot lately. So I'm not surprised. I don't think you guys are surprised as the audience, but you know what? It doesn't matter tonight because we have an awesome guest. She is a second grade teacher and 1/3 of Have and Hold events, Ashtyn Renn. What's going on, Ashtyn?
Yes. Hey, I'm so excited to be on here. Thanks for inviting me, Josh. And we're missing Deb tonight, but that's okay.
Well, you don't know
That's
her,
okay.
so I'm going to let that
I
slide.
don't
But if you knew her, you'd be like, this is
I
probably
don't know.
better.
I don't know her, but I've been seeing some clips on the Instagram and I wanted to meet her tonight. So maybe she'll see
Oh,
this and maybe I'll meet her eventually.
this kind of makes me sick. I'm going to be honest. Like, I like you, Ashtyn, but this is making me very sad. It's not a
Oh
good
shoot.
start. But you know what though? I get it. This, like, usually what happens is if we have another teacher on, even if it's not the same level. Like, you teachers
hmm
stick together, so it's probably best that she's not here for my own sake because most of
We
the
would
time,
have
like,
our own little club and then you would be excluded
that's how it
type of
goes.
thing.
Hmm.
Okay. I
That's how it
see.
goes. That's why my wife and my sister have never been on this podcast with Deb because I can't have it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So,
totally.
anyways, enough of that. We're so excited to have you on the podcast. Like I was telling you beforehand, you've been on my list of people to ask for quite a while. But I feel like usually when it pops into my head or as I'm scrolling through my list, I always come to your name during the summer. And I know you guys are incredibly busy. So I'm like, I can't do that. So finally, I just made a note. Okay, wait until the fall and then we'll get you on here. So I'm so glad that it worked out. But
Totally.
normally we start the podcast off by explaining how we're connected to our guests because it's called Connectable and we're trying to get people more connected to each other. And so why not start off with how we're connected? And oh man, this one's tough because this is gonna make me feel and sound very old. And this is the first time this is happening on this podcast. And we've had
Yeah.
some younger guests, but like I've technically known you since you were in middle school.
Yeah,
And I worked, and I've mentioned this before, I worked with Shireen, who's basically like your second mom, and
totally.
her daughter, your best friend, is like your sister. And so I got to
hmm
know Shireen, obviously, through working with her. And then just by proximity, you were always around. And so I saw you guys,
Yes.
and you and Maddie were always having so much fun. And I'm sure you guys still do, but like just so much joy and energy
Totally.
came from that friendship. And so it was cool being able to be an observer of that for so many years. And so I've known you for a very long time, but
Yeah.
we haven't had very many conversations like this. So I'm actually really excited to hear more about what you're doing and everything that you're involved with. But yeah, like I said, I'm not gonna lie, I was dreading this intro because I'm like, I'm gonna have to say I've known her since middle school and
Yeah.
I'm old. So
I know. It's funny. I was talking to my husband about like who you were because I was telling him I'm gonna go on this podcast. It's so cool. I've known Josh for so long. He's like, oh well, how did you guys meet? I'm like, honestly, I just feel like we've known each other for so long. I knew it was through Shreen, through the church and things like that, but I was like, I don't know. You were always around. I was always around. Like it was just always, I mean, I think you made a couple videos we were in and things like that, but I feel like we just go way back. I just told him it's just, we just go way back. So
yeah, that's funny. We did you guys did a what's your why video for me,
right.
you and
Yes,
Maddie
yes, that's what it
together.
was.
And I have that picture somewhere where I was holding the what's your why sign and I was with you guys. That's a weird picture to look at too, because I don't look much younger, but you guys look really young at that point. You guys were either what, like freshmen or sophomores in high school.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we were maybe sophomores in high school at that point because I remember I think in the video Maddie talks a little bit about her ACL injury or something like that. And I think that
Yes.
happened our freshman year. So I think that kind of puts it into perspective a little bit. I think it was early high school.
Yeah. So it's been a long time. And so it's
Yeah.
it's
It's been a
really
while.
cool having this conversation with you now, especially because of all the things that you're doing now, being a teacher, um, being a part of your own business with a couple of your friends. Like it's really cool. So uh all that being said, I'm gonna stop talking and let you kind of take over. Oh, and before I do, actually, if you're not watching the video and you're only listening, this is one of the very few times where one of our guests has the over-the-ear headphones, like myself. So I don't feel
Yes.
so left out. This is awesome. Usually
Mm-hmm.
we've had some audio issues where like, can you hear me? Like, I can't hear anything you're
Yeah.
saying. You can't hear me.
Yeah.
So Ashton came on, she was ready. The sound's good, the video's good. So I appreciate your preparedness, which is probably the
Yes.
teacher and the event planner in you, I would guess.
I was trying to get it all set up, and my husband's more techie than me. So I'm like, I got to make sure the video's clear. And I'm actually using his laptop. I tried mine and I was like, I don't think the visual is clear enough. I felt like I needed to upgrade a little bit. So I did. I tried to come prepared, test everything out before to make sure we were ready to go.
You're a true pro. And I'm not going to call out any guests, but anybody who's listening, who's been a guest or wants to be a guest on the show, take notes, because it runs so much smoother when you do what she did. Test everything before you hop on the air. Don't do it when we're talking to you. So again, no, I'm not calling out anybody specifically. Just know, come prepared.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe they know who they are.
They definitely know who they are. Okay. Anyways, I promised I was going to stop talking. So my first question for you, Ashtyn, is tell me a little bit about how you got started with have and hold events, because it's obviously everything, that I've seen from following you guys is really amazing. But how did the whole thing start? How did you guys envision this? Has it been something that you guys have wanted to do for a long time, or was it just kind of like a spur of the moment? Hey, we should do this. Like, tell us the backstory of have and hold.
Yeah, so it's such a funny question. I feel like there's so much to talk about, and I'll try and keep it brief. But so I think you kind of mentioned it earlier that it's not just me. So I'm 1/3 of Have and Hold, and the other two owners are my two best friends, two of my best friends. I have some really awesome friends, but two of my best friends, Corey and Sierra, and we have gone to school together for a really long time. So Sierra and I have been best friends since preschool. So we go back like really far. It feels like birth. And then Corey ended up joining us in 5th grade. So like still elementary. We're very young when we become friends. Maddie, who you mentioned previously, she's also a part of this friend group. We were just like best friends growing up all through high school. We got super close, and then we ended up going to college together up here where I currently live in Oregon, up near Portland. So we're a little bit south of Portland. We went to school at George Fox University, and all four of us were together. We all came for different things. I was playing volleyball at George Fox, and both Corey and Sierra were kind of in the business department. Maddie was in the honors program. So we were all kind of doing different things, but it was really awesome to all be together. And then, yeah, so I guess like the backstory behind it, and you kind of mentioned like, is this something you guys had wanted to do for a long time? And the answer is no. Sierra and I were actually out on a drive one day running a couple errands for her job. And we were just talking about how much we love doing things together and like working together. And we were just randomly saying like, I think it would be so fun to be able to be together and work together, like for our job, for like how we make money. That would be really cool. And so we were like, well, is there any jobs that we would be good at? Because we had different majors. Like I said, Corey and Sierra were in the business department. I'm an elementary education major. And so what we were kind of training to do was very different, but we thought like we have a lot of similar interests. We work really well together. We love hosting things. We have a similar eye for design, that kind of thing. And so we ended up kind of just throwing out the idea of like, what if we were wedding planners? And it truly was just like that casual. It was like, what if we were wedding planners and we like planned weddings and events? And it was like, yeah, I think we could do that. And literally from that car ride, we kind of just decided like, let's go for it. So we ended up talking to Corey about it, and we actually did talk to Maddie. This is something that we don't talk about a lot, but we talked to her too, because it was kind of like we were a quad in college. And she's a nurse now. She was a nursing major, so she was super busy and didn't really have the time. And she's like so supportive and like wanted us to go for it. And so we did. We just basically from that moment decided to start like reaching out to business professors at George Fox and getting advice and thoughts on, do you know any event planners? Like what would your advice be for starting a business in general? What does getting a business license look like? It really was not something that we were like, we've always wanted to do this. It was like, how could we work together? I feel like we could be good at this. Let's go for it. And then I think probably within the next couple of months, we had a name and a business license, and we were just like decided that we could do it. And that's kind of like the extent of how we got started, which is pretty crazy. And I feel like it's funny. It wasn't like, we've been wanting to be wedding planners forever. It was just like, we decided, yeah, we could be good at that. Let's just do it. And so we just went for it. And that's how we got started.
I
Pretty
love
crazy.
that. No, I love that, because I think, sometimes when we've had people on this podcast or just anybody you talk to that's pursuing some kind of goal or dream, there's like this back and forth, back and forth. Do we want to do this? Do we not? Maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. You guys just decided like, hey, let's go for it. And I think the fact that you
Yes.
guys were just willing to do that just very freely is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's something that we talk about a lot, that, like, I think having the idea and then just going for it is something that maybe isn't always. I think, like you're saying, people kinda go back and forth and weigh the pros and cons. Like, we didn't really give ourselves time to even do that. We just had an idea and we're like, "Let's just try it. Let's just go for it and see if we could build something out of it." And, it was kind of an interesting time. So, I'm going a little bit past the question, but that was 2019 when we started that. It was the end of the year in 2019, so we were juniors in college. And, so you can imagine the following summer would have been 2020. And so COVID hits, and that's supposed to be like our first real summer. Any events that we had on the calendar, which were just a few at that point, um, got canceled. So that was kind of a bummer for our business. And then COVID obviously extended a little bit into 2021 as well. I do still consider 2021 like our first real year. But last year for sure was like we were kind of full force into it. And then this summer has been really, really busy as well. So our first 2 years were kind of like building it and figuring out like how, clients and things like that. And then the last couple of years we've felt like have been like our true first years. So it's like we've been in business since 2019. It just doesn't feel that long necessarily. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's interesting because I feel like we have so many people that we've talked to, and me for my other sports podcasts that I do.
Yeah.
I know a couple of coaches who they're coaches slash teachers that started their coaching career in 2020, or I guess
Mhm.
like early 2020, and their first
Mhm.
like a softball coach, right? Kira, she would have started in 2020 that season, but that was her
Mhm.
first season coaching. She's like, what is going on here? You guys are in
Yeah.
a little bit of a different position because you guys started beforehand and then kind of had to wait for a little bit and then jump back into it. Do you feel
Yeah.
like, obviously there was a lot that went bad in 2020, but if you're looking at your business specifically, do you think that was a positive or a negative? Obviously, you couldn't make money necessarily the same way you could have if there was
Right.
no, pandemic. But as far as, really thinking out and planning what it was going to look like, do you think that was a positive or a negative?
Yeah, I think overall it was a positive for sure. I think that we view it that way. It gave us time to kind of, like you said, dream up what started so quickly. It gave us time to really dream up what we wanted it to eventually be. And obviously we're still dreaming. Like we have not made it. We're still like working towards things and dreaming, but it definitely gave us time. I do think that a lot of things were just completely paused at the same time. Like there was times when we weren't working on it at all and we were focused on other things. So I think overall in general it was probably a good thing. Um, and we also ended up having a lot of people. I mean, there's such a huge trend of weddings. Just the volume of weddings that are happening last year and this year of people who either met, like a lot of COVID relationships, like people who met and started dating during COVID are now kind of like in the cycle of getting married. It's been a few years. And then also just weddings that got postponed. That was more of a last year thing than 2023. But we've definitely had an influx of inquiries just from people who had put off their wedding and then we're looking for planners. So I think that was positive too, just for, helping us gain more weddings and get more experience, was there were so many people wanting to get married who had postponed from 2020, 2021. So I think overall a positive thing, but obviously we would have liked to do more weddings right when we got started to gain that experience earlier. But yeah, we wouldn't change it.
Yeah, it's that's a great outlook on that because yeah, it's it really threw a lot of people off, but especially people in your position who had something really cool that they were just starting, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, this is not at all what I would have expected it to look like. So
Right.
it's great that you guys have such a positive outlook on that part of it. But um so it's interesting too that the fact that there's three different people, because it's hard enough to get two people on the same page, even if they're going out to
Yeah,
dinner, right? If you have a group of friends that's going out to dinner, it's like, where are we going to go? It takes forever just to figure out where you're going to go. But the fact that
totally.
you had three different people with three different majors, three different skill sets,
Hmm.
all were willing to jump into this thing at the same time. Like I said already, it's cool that you were willing to do it, but then you got three people on the same page that were willing to do it.
Yeah.
Like that is really cool. So like it kind of was meant to be, it feels like.
Yeah, totally. And I do think that like over time, our vision for it has definitely pivoted. Like at first, we kind of thought the three of us would have like very different roles. Like maybe I think even the initial conversation was like, Corey, she had a minor in graphic design, so she would be more design focused. Sierra would be more planning focused, and I was even maybe wanting to do some photography stuff, and we would be maybe like a package deal type of thing. That quickly changed from kind of us three having separate roles to being like one cohesive team that works together on planning and designing a wedding. And so I think like over time things changed, but it's funny that you bring up like three people. I think we got a ton of advice. Like I mentioned, we went to like business professors and people at George Fox to get advice from them. And a lot of people just said, like, be wary of entering into business with partnerships. It's so hard and it takes a toll on your relationship, especially when you're friends and things like that. And I think what it's a little bit different because we've known each other for so long and we are so close. So it's not really like we're casual friends that just decided to jump into business. We are truly like sisters who decided to do this. And so although I do see where people were coming from as we've grown in our business, I can see how difficult it is and how there's like really serious decision making that does end up impacting you personally, financially, all those kinds of things. It's just we have a very unique situation where like even if we're disagreeing about something, it there's nothing that would be able to come between our relationship. And I also think that like what you're saying about three of you getting on the same page, we kind of actually call that the power of three. We like kind of view it as a positive thing because if we're having a conversation about something and we disagree, we will usually put it up for a vote. And then we have the power of three because it could be two versus one. And I think that that only works if the one person, so say like sometimes this happens on wedding day, like we're trying to decide where to put a welcome sign or something like that. And we have differing opinions. Well, we'll put it up for a vote, and if two people decide one thing, the part that's really important is that the person who's the one who might feel like kind of like, oh man, I was the one that wanted that and I'm the only one. They have to get on board with the other two. You have to just set aside what you are wanting. And if the two people were agreeing on something, you have to be fully in. If you are gonna like hesitate and not be a part, then that's gonna make it really, really hard. But we've kind of established that relationship between the three of us that we have the power of three. And if two people think something, then the third one joins and we're all gonna go all in on it together, if that makes sense. So I think it's almost even a little bit easier than a partnership when we're making decisions because we can have a majority vote. And so that's helped us out a lot in the past.
Yeah. Well, as you know, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, but you kind of just nailed that question. Because my thought was like, how do you protect the friendship? Because I would imagine that for you guys, the most important part of that is maintaining the friendship and protecting the friendship and that lifelong like relationship that you guys had. And yeah, I've heard the same thing that you know, it's always a little bit of a dicey thing going into business with
Mm-hmm.
family or friends. Um,
Right.
but it's awesome that you guys have that understanding and that system basically that allows you guys to continue to do the thing that you love while also maintaining and protecting that relationship. Because you know, I've seen in some situations where that goes sideways really quickly, and you have
Yeah.
brothers that aren't talking to each other. They have to go to the same
Mm-hmm.
parties, you know, family get-togethers, but
Mm-hmm.
they're just like at
Mm-hmm.
opposite ends of the room. It's like, this is awkward. And
So
so,
awkward.
you know, it's just very strange. So it's awesome that you guys have some of those safeguards that protect, you know, the friendship, because that's the most important thing. And I can't imagine any amount of money would be worth sacrificing that. So it's cool. It's almost like you guys have some of these little like break in case of emergency, like
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yep.
buttons. It's like if in
Yeah.
case something goes sideways, like we have some safeguards. And I think that's really smart. More people should do that, because I think there is like a certain excitement, even though that idea is out there, that you know, you got to be careful when you enter those types of business relationships with people that you're close to already.
Mm-hmm.
People, I think there's that excitement, right? Like I'm sure you guys felt it. Like there's just so much
Totally.
excitement and energy. It's like we're just going to do it, where they don't think through that part of it. So
Yeah.
hearing everything that you just said, I think is awesome.
Yeah. And I think we definitely are intentional too about time spent focusing on the business and then also time spent just hanging out and enjoying. Sometimes it's really hard because when we are together, like our brains are constantly moving on the business and we're talking about it. But we do try and make sure, and it does help that the three of our husbands are best friends. So they're constantly wanting to hang out. And so we do try and take intentional time where we're just hanging out, watching movies, or going to do something as all six of us or whatever. So we do try and protect our time a little bit, even though that is hard. Like the boundary does get overlapped a little bit of like, oh, we want to talk about this wedding when we're together, but we do try and intentionally schedule time to hang out with each other, aside from just like our business meetings or our client meetings being the only time that we see each other.
Now, does that get difficult when you go outside of the six of you guys, when you have other friends that aren't a part of that three? Do you, I imagine you have to be really careful in that situation where you don't start getting into the wedding talk and the planning talk, because it's you three, and so everybody
Yeah.
gets that. But then at the same time, if there's other people that are outside of that trying to spend that, like you said, that quality time with you guys, I imagine that's where it would be the most difficult, because other
Yeah.
people are involved.
It's a really good question because and a point to make, because we have some really awesome friends here. We're all still in Newburgh up here where we went to school, and we have some really awesome friends that we do hang out with aside from just the six of us. And it is hard. And I have to say that like our friends are really patient with us and really they also, I think their heart is also in the business because they've known us since it was birthed, like since it started. And so
Sure.
they hear so much behind the scenes and things like that. I think we do try to be careful to not have our hangouts just be focused on that so that we're excluding people. But I do think that there's a level of like they want to know what we're doing and who we're working with and things like that. And so I'm appreciative of really supportive friends and family who are willing to hear our ideas, hear about our clients, hear about the weddings that we're planning and things like that. But I think that's a good point, trying to protect time with other people that isn't just focused on weddings and then just excluding the other people who are there. It's hard, but yeah, that's something that we do work on for sure.
It's so hard because it's I think from the outside, sometimes what people don't understand is this is a passion of yours. It's a
Hmm.
dream of yours. And so
Hmm.
it's not something that you can just necessarily easily turn off. It's like, oh, I'm just not gonna think
Totally.
about it anymore. I can't speak for you, but I imagine that you're just constantly thinking about it. Even when you're just like, okay, I'm gonna spend quality time with these other people, there's somewhere in the back of your mind that's still thinking about the next thing you have to do. I do with
Totally.
podcasting. I'm like, that's a good podcast question. Let me tuck that in the back
Right.
of my mind. They're like, I don't care about your podcast. Like I said, I know, but still, it's on my mind. I gotta think about it. And so,
Totally.
um, just I think it's just very wise that you guys do that, because you can have the best of both worlds. That's the beauty
Totally.
of the whole thing. Like you guys can have awesome friendships with people outside of the business, and then really focus and put all your time and energy into the business as well. And you guys have seem to have found that balance, which I think is great. Now, I did want to ask you, when you guys first
Hmm.
started this business, and like you said, it seems like the primary event that you put on is weddings. Were
Hmm.
any of you guys married at this point when you guys started it?
No.
Okay,
Good
so
question.
now,
Yeah.
yeah, now before you answer that, when you first started like getting with clients, did that have any, was there any hesitation on their part? Like, wait a minute, like you may have attended some weddings, but you haven't actually, gone through the process yourself. Like, did any of that play a part when you were trying to get clients initially?
Definitely. I we talk about this a lot. There's this aspect of like we decided that we wanted to do something like have a business, and we just decided, yeah, we could be professionals at that, even though we've never done it before. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, there was an aspect of like we are hungry to learn, and we know that we are brand new at this, and we have so much to figure out. But when somebody is trusting you with one of the most important days of their life, you definitely need to. I don't want to say fake it till you make it because I don't think that we would want to be dishonest. Like we always were upfront that we hadn't done a ton of weddings with our first few clients, but I think that there has to be a confidence that you have, even if you don't have it, that you give off, especially when you're in that position. And so I think, yeah, like us not having been married before and not having really coordinated any weddings, I think a lot of wedding planners get started by like shadowing through a different wedding planning company, like assisting weddings and things like that. None of us had even done that. So I think like I had attended a ton of weddings and seen a ton of weddings, and that's kind of what we were pulling off of. But I think the Lord was just really faithful in putting people in our lives who trusted us enough to run one of the most important days of their life with confidence that we didn't really have, but we had to kind of pretend that we had it. And the more weddings we did, like we did our first wedding and we learned so much the first time. I mean, we still do weddings and we still learn so much even now, but like the first couple weddings, you're just constantly learning and taking notes and making, oh, make sure you ask about ice next time. Like we didn't even have any ice at this wedding. Like there were little things that would happen, and we just continue to grow and to learn and to become more and more confident, so that the confidence eventually like caught up to where what we were trying to give off was actually how we felt. I think we're still there. Like we've been doing this for a while now. We've done a ton of weddings, and it's like, okay, I actually feel confident that I can run this and I know what I'm doing. But for so long, it was like, I'm trying to be in this position where I need to get people to trust me, and I'm not even completely sure. Like I'm still learning, if that makes sense. So I think not having the experience, but having to try and be confident and be assertive. It's an assertive position too, like being a wedding planner, being a coordinator. You need to be assertive, but we also want to have a warmth. But if you're too like wishy-washy, then people don't respect you. There's like these serious lines that it's like, how are you assertive and kind and gentle, but you know what you're talking about, and that kind of thing. So we had to work through that a lot, and that was super interesting at the beginning, for sure.
Oh yeah, no, I have no doubt. What I think people can tell, no matter what it is, whether it's the wedding planning thing or any other kind of business, even the
Mhm,
people that don't have the years of experience in that field, I
mhm,
think people can tell the heart behind it. I think they can tell the person's work ethic and their
right.
character, and I think they can tell that that person does have that hunger. And I think there's
Mhm,
the other side of that too, where someone's been doing it for so long, where they lose the hunger, they've almost become full, and they just don't have that same desire to focus on the details. Right? It's just like it's just
totally.
autopilot at that point. And so I think even if you guys hadn't had that experience yet, it makes sense why people would be drawn to that
Mhm,
hunger and that desire to make this thing work, because it's you know your event's still in good hands, even if there's not this wealth of experience yet. You know
right,
that they're going to do everything they possibly can to make your day special and make that connection for you. So I
right.
think I think that's cool, and that speaks a lot to you guys and the energy that you guys put out there. um and I think it is interesting because I haven't mentioned this yet, but you are an athlete. You played in high school and in college. It sounds very much like an athlete's mentality, everything you're saying. And I think especially
Yeah.
like when you get done with an event, just like you get done with a game, how long does it take you to really unwind and like let go? Because when you're an athlete, you play a whole game, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the game, like there's still stuff that's running through your mind. Like you could have done this better. You could have made this play.
Yes.
Oh, you had a really good game, and you just keep replaying those moments. Like, is it the same thing with wedding planning? Like, do you like how long does it take for you to actually fully let go of that event and just be like, okay, we're done. I can relax and move on to the next one.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think you nailed it. I think it does kind of feel like game day. Like
Yeah.
wedding day has the adrenaline, it has the excitement of a game day, and it has also the you get fatigued and you have to keep pushing through and those kinds of things. So there are a lot of similarities actually, which is so funny. But I do think that like we are like on instant replay everything in our brains the moment that we leave the wedding. It's really nice when all three of us are together. We've kind of started splitting up weddings this year a little bit differently, so all three of us aren't at every single wedding that we do. But we're always constantly recapping with with ourselves and with our whoever was there, like what went well. We always ask each other what went well, what could we have done differently. Those are always things that we're talking about. I think we handled this really well. I think this was the right decision. I think we could have changed that. And even so much like we did a wedding this past weekend on Saturday, and it was like dumping rain. And I was replaying everything. We ended up like shifting the whole plan. We were supposed to have, dances and everything outside. We brought everybody into the indoor space that we had and kind of shifted the plan. And my partner Corey and I were kind of talking about like, okay, I think that was a really good decision because it did end up coming down harder, but I think we should have maybe grabbed the napkins when we felt like it was starting to rain because all of the napkins ended up soaked. We could have done that differently. So we're like talking through decisions that we made. It kind of feels like watching film. I wish kind of that we like had GoPros or something where we'd actually watch what we did and like go through and make notes.
It's not a bad
But
idea.
we are always kind of going through what decisions did we make and how could we have handled that differently was that the right choice? I think also like similar to sports, when you make a mistake, like for me, if I was playing volleyball and then I hit like a really important ball into the net, that's really hard to let go of. And when you're in the middle of a game, you have to let it go. You can't dwell on that mistake because it's going to impact your play in the future. And I feel like that was kind of true for us too. If we felt like a, a parent, sometimes parents can be hard to work with too, like not just the clients, but like the parents, the family that are involved. If we felt like, oh, a parent maybe said something to us with a sassy tone, or like that parent was unhappy with this decision we made, or whatever, if we felt like something went wrong, it's really hard for us to let go of that because we ultimately just want our clients to be thrilled with the day that we've created or the day that we're coordinating or planning or whatever. And so I think similarly, you can't we learned that we cannot dwell on one person being unhappy with one thing that we did. We have to let it go. And then if we should have made a better decision, we'll fix it next time. If we felt confident in it, then we cannot let the opinion of one person impact the rest of our day or how we feel about the wedding as a whole. So I feel like I don't know. I didn't really answer your question. I think the whole drive home, every single time we do a wedding, is completely focused on what happened, and even into the next day. And we'll normally recap it like, say, Corey and I did a wedding. This happened this weekend. Corey and I did a wedding. Sierra wasn't there. We will have a time where all three of us talk about the details of the wedding. Like Sierra's always wanting to know also what happened. I wasn't there. What was good? What was bad? That kind of thing. So we're filling each other in. And I would say after that, like the day after, we're done thinking about it for the most part. But that whole drive home and the next day, we're probably still like playing over things in our brain from what happened that day.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
I before I forget, I got to go back to this idea of the parents that are challenging. And as I mentioned before, you are a second grade teacher, correct?
Yeah.
I
Yes.
have the level correct, right? Second grade.
Yes. Second
Okay.
grade. Hmm.
So I have a dumb question I did not send you because I saved this one, but I put under dumb questions. So
Okay.
in your experience, what would
Hmm.
be, I'm going to add to this based off what you just said.
Okay.
What's more difficult to work with? Is it a rowdy second grader? Is it a panicked bride? Or this was not part of my question until just now, or is it the difficult, sassy parent at the wedding, not the teacher
Oh,
parent, but at the wedding? I'm sure the teacher parents are a different thing, but we're going to leave them out of this one.
I need like a D all of the above. Like it's all
Sure.
it's all horrible. No, I'm just kidding. I do think that ultimately like my answer would be like parents tend to be the hardest part of teaching. And maybe wedding planning too. Like I think that we've been blessed with really good brides. We haven't had too many bridezillas or, groom, anything like that. It's mostly the parents. And there's so many reasons for that. But then also, like, I would say that in teaching, like, sometimes the kids are hard, but like often the parents are even harder than the kids.
Sure.
So that's kind of a funny thing. I think I'm going into a little bit more detail about parents at weddings. I just think that, like, sometimes it's really hard to navigate parent and bride and groom relationships because traditionally parents are contributing money towards weddings. And so
Sure.
they often feel that they have a say in how things go. And maybe that's valid. Like if they're paying for the majority of the wedding, do they get this much, and so navigating that relationship, for like if we're planning the wedding and the parent is telling us one thing but we know that the bride has expressed that she wants something a certain way, it's really interesting to navigate that. And ultimately we always say that we're advocates for the bride, for the client who has hired us, but it definitely does cause an interesting dynamic. And even to see our brides or our grooms talk to their parents about, well, we're paying for this wedding, so we're going to invite so and so, so and so, and so and so. And the bride and groom are like, we don't even know them. Like, we don't want them at our wedding or whatever.
Yeah.
So all of those types of things are definitely like, I don't know. It's interesting to navigate, but we take pride in our ability to win parents over. I think a lot of parents, like, initially when they meet us or just think about wedding planners, kind of have like a bad taste in their mouth or kind of have a negative attitude. So our goal is
Sure.
always like, if we can win the parents over, then we've done our job. Like our goal is to win the parents over on the wedding day or even beforehand, and make sure that they feel like the wedding is, taken care of, and that they trust us as well.
Yeah. That's I am married still. Um,
Mm-hmm.
At least as of right now, I'm still married. But yeah, you can kind of forget about the financial part of it and how the parents are connected to that.
Mhm.
And that would be a very difficult thing to navigate because, like you said, at the end of the day, the check is coming from them to
Yeah.
you guys, and so you kind of have to be careful there. But also, like you said, the main focus is making sure that the bride and groom are happy with the
Mhm.
outcome of their wedding day. So I think that's very interesting. Not a place I would want to be, but good for you guys wanting to make
Yeah.
that part of your your job. So yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned groomzillas too. Like I never really thought about that because I was not that. I'm pretty laid back.
Yeah.
But so groomzilla, is that a real thing? Does that happen from time to time?
I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say that we've had really any groomzillas. I think that, like, what's interesting about, and I'm generally speaking, this is not true for all relationships, all guys, but I feel like
So
for the
don't get
most
offended,
part,
anybody. Don't get
I know,
offended.
right? I'm like, I don't wanna offend anybody, but I feel like for the most part, the girls are the ones that have, like, vision and,
Sure,
ideas for decorations and kind of all of the little details, and when we ask the groom, like, "What are things that are important to you on the day?" There's usually, like, 1 or 2 things. I feel like normally it's, like, good food, like, good drinks, and I don't know, maybe good music, but it's usually, like, just 1 or 2 things that they feel strongly about,
sure,
and that's about it. They don't really care about the little details as much, and so I feel like whenever we hear something that a groom feels passionate about, like, "Oh, I really want this," we obviously wanna try and make that happen because there's not a
sure.
lot that they're expecting, but they really want this to happen, so we're gonna try and make that a priority, but I don't think we've had any crazy grooms yet.
Okay. Well, if you
Yeah.
do, you'll come back on the podcast maybe and share that
Yeah.
experience because
Share some share some stories, yeah.
yeah, especially if it's like what was that movie? Godzilla versus King Kong. Like if you have a situation where the bride and groom are both adamant about something and they're going at it, it would be awful for you guys, but me as a podcaster, it would be fantastic. Like it would be a great
Right.
story to hear here. So if it
Mhm.
happens, just let
Mhm.
me know and we'll chat
Okay.
about it. We'll leave names out and stuff like that, but
Right, right.
we'll talk about it.
Okay, I like it. I like it.
Perfect.
I'll definitely take notes.
Thank you.
I'll
That's
let
all I
you know.
ask. That's all I ask. Another dumb question for you, and if you don't feel
Yeah.
comfortable answering this, because at this point, how
I'm
many
sure it
clients have you
will.
guys had roughly?
This is a great question because I feel like I was actually thinking about this the other day. At first, we were always hesitant to answer that question. Like we don't want to say that we have only had 3 clients or something like that. And we're at the point where we've had a ton, and I actually would like to go through and count them, and I just haven't yet. So we wouldn't have to make that up now. Like I feel confident in the number that we've had. I just don't really know what it is. It's been quite a few. So it's been since 2019. I don't know. We've done over 20 weddings this year. Probably like,
Awesome.
yeah, I don't know. So I don't know. It so many. It feels like
That's
a lot.
okay. That's okay. That's not the awkward part. I just like to ask that question because if you did like 3 weddings, I would not ask this next question, but since
Yeah.
you've done plenty, you couldn't really like, they can't really like deduce who I'm talking about. So have
Yeah.
you ever had a situation where you guys are looking at the bride and the groom, not somebody you knew, but say it was like
Mhm.
someone you don't really know that well, and you're just looking and like, this thing may not last. I don't know. I'm not feeling great about this relationship. Like, has that happened? I've asked one
Yeah.
other person this. She was on a couple episodes ago. She's a photographer.
Mhm.
And she's like,
Okay.
there's a couple of times in the engagement photos, you can kind of tell like there's something weird about the relationship. It's like, I don't know if this thing's gonna make it. So have you experienced that before?
Yeah,
Oh no.
I don't know about I definitely think maybe not I don't know if this is gonna last, but we've had some really awkward weddings where it's like they get married and usually when, like, the officiant announces, like, "For the first time, Mr. and Mrs. whatever," people go crazy and they're standing up and they're cheering or whatever, they're just so excited, and there's been a few weddings where it's like crickets. And it's so awkward, and it's
That's
like, are
terrible.
people excited to be here? I don't know. And then the other thing would just be I think so overall, I think, like, the awkwardness comes from the wedding where it's like, are we happy about this? Is the family are we excited or are we not excited about this marriage? I don't know. And, like, we're doing a dance and the DJ's inviting, like we'll do, like, anniversary dances where, like, if you've been married, you come out on the dance floor and whatever and just like nobody comes. Nobody's responding to the DJ. And it's like, why did you guys come? Are you excited for this? Or are you just coming for food? I don't know. It's
Man.
awkward. So we've had a couple of those, but not too many. Not too
Okay.
many.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause I feel like that would be one of the most interesting parts about being a wedding planner is like you're there to plan this wedding, this special day for these people. And if you're getting the sense that this
Hmm.
thing is not, you know, great,
Yeah.
like that would suck.
Yeah.
Like I imagine it would affect the planning part of it. Like it would affect your enjoyment of the process, I think.
Totally. Totally. This is a little bit different, but I was gonna say that we did a wedding where we found out halfway through. So like one of the main jobs that we have is to obviously make sure that the bride and groom are actually get officially married on that day. So signing the marriage license is like something that
Yeah,
we generally handle, and we're managing that, and we're grabbing the witnesses right after the ceremony and making sure that everybody signs in the proper spots, and that the person who's going to take it to the county clerk or whoever, they know what they're doing, they know their time frame, because it's a short time frame after the wedding actually occurs that you have to get the marriage license in to for it to be valid.
sure.
And so we're kind of managing that. And we had one where we went to the bride after the ceremony and we're like, okay, it's time to do the marriage license, but we actually haven't seen it yet. Is that somewhere that we could locate it so that we could get you guys to sign it really quick before we go on with the reception? And she's like, no, we're not doing that today. And we were kind of like, well, I don't know how to tell you this, but like we have to do that today. And she's like, no, we're not doing it today. And come to find out, they had the couple had already been married, and nobody at
Oh,
the wedding knew. Like it was a huge secret that like the family didn't know, the bridesmaids and groomsmen didn't know. Like from our perspective, we're like, I don't we actually have to do that today for you guys to be married. And so it was so confusing, but it was like this huge secret that not everybody knew, and they had already been married. So that was kind of a
wow.
crazy situation. We hadn't had that yet. So that was kind of wild.
That makes
But
sense. Well, I mean, yeah, the
yeah.
way they said it was like it's like you talk about the gym, like, yeah, I'm not going today. I'm not gonna do that today.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Not the same
Exactly, like,
thing.
so casual, like, it's like, we just won't do that." It's like, "Well, I don't know if you know this, but that's the whole reason you're here. Like,
Yeah,
that's why you came here today." So, I don't know, yeah, it was just super, super funny.
that's wild. All right, well,
Yeah.
good. See, again, I imagine that's a fun part of the job too. Is like you said, recapping the whole event, talking about what went right, what went wrong. But let's be honest, part of the fun of those recaps is like these people were crazy, or this thing happened. I can't believe they did that, or they didn't do this, or they almost, that's got to be one of the most enjoyable parts of the whole process.
Yeah, it's like when you go to an amusement park and you just, like, sit on a bench for a little while and people watch, and it's just so
Mhm.
interesting. That's like an entire wedding day. It's just, like, seeing people, just watching people the whole time, and like seeing how people interact with their family and their friends, and just seeing how the night goes, because people typically get looser as the night goes on and stuff
Right,
like that. And then sometimes there's drama if people are drinking. Like it's just a funny. There's a whole side of it where we're like very focused on obviously the business and making sure that the timeline goes, everything like that. But there are like funny things that you're mentioning where it's like we're just like watching people. It's kind of a fun people watching job.
for sure. Any fights that you've seen?
We've seen a couple fights between
Ooh,
like bridesmaids and like their dates, of where I think typically like what the bottom line of all of the arguments or fights we've seen on wedding day is always alcohol. Like
sure.
it's this bridesmaid started dancing with this guy, but her date was over here, and so now they're fighting. Like that's where a lot of our fights have come in. But I don't
This is
definitely
why you
no
need the
fist
GoPro.
fights.
You mentioned the
This is why
GoPro
we
for
need the
like the other
GoPro.
stuff, like making sure things went well. No, the GoPro needs to be in the middle of the dance floor to catch that fight and the start of the fight. That's what you really need it
Mhm,
for.
mhm, picking up all the drama. Yeah, I think you're onto something. We might need to, and we carry fanny packs because we constantly need scissors and pens, and we
Sure.
have our walkie-talkies, so we're kinda like CIA. We have our walkie-talkies set up so that we can communicate with each other around the venue, and, we need to just, like, sneak a little GoPro in there, I think, so that when we're walking around, you can see and hear what we're seeing and hearing.
I think so. Personally, I think it would be a good idea. It would
Okay.
bring like a whole another level of marketing to
Yeah.
your event planning business. Probably not the best thing to put out there. It's like, hey,
Right.
this happened at our event. Come book with
Mhm.
us. But it would be fun. It would be entertaining for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I'll bring it to the team. I think we might need to have like some kind of waiver or something that people signed if we were actually going to do that. Like, I don't know how legal it is, but that would be pretty funny.
Sure. And then you bring that to the team. They're like, hey, maybe never do that podcast again because that guy was an idiot.
No.
Wouldn't be the
Oh
first time.
man.
So that's okay. So let me ask you this. Um,
No.
as far as, obviously you guys are still, you guys have been doing it for a little while, but in the grand scheme of life, still fairly new, but there's so much
Yes.
you've probably learned within that short period of time. If you had to point to one thing that was maybe like the biggest surprise that you weren't expecting to learn on this journey, or maybe it was something like that's always stuck out to you. It's like, okay, if I was to give advice to someone, this is the one thing that I would tell them. If you're planning on doing something like this, beware of this. What would that one piece of advice be?
It's a good question. And I feel like I have so many different answers. Um, I think I think ultimately, I think what I've been so surprised about is that we really are constantly changing and having new ideas of what we want to do. And sometimes we feel really frustrated that we haven't just nailed down like exactly what we want to do, exactly where we want to do it, and that kind of stuff. But I think that everybody we went to a conference and I remember a lady saying like I initially started my business here. I've pivoted my business 3 times since then. And that's okay. It's really normal for people who are business owners to have something that you're doing and then see an opportunity in a different area and then pivot what you're doing. And that could just be like based on different, I don't know, trends, different opportunities where you're living, what you're seeing as a need, what you're, just different things. And I think that's sometimes been discouraging for us of like we don't have it all figured out right now and we're still deciding, do we want to offer this service? Do we want to just focus on this? Like do we want to be solely wedding focused or do we want to offer bridal showers and bachelorette parties and things like that? Do we want to do day of coordination where we're coordinating the wedding or do we want to only do weddings where we design the entire thing and plan from start to finish? Because there's so many different packages within just like wedding planning. It's not just like one thing. And so I think like that's still being up in the air and us kind of changing over time what we do, I think sometimes feels discouraging for us of like, how do we not have this figured out yet? But I think just reminding ourselves it's okay. And it's okay for things to change over time as you learn and as you grow. And you don't have to have it all figured out. And also, you don't have to be good at every single aspect of the business that you own or that you run. I think for us, like, we there's so many different things that we're doing. We're running our social media, we're also planning weddings, we're also doing the business side of things where we're sending out contracts and sending out invoices and paying our taxes and keeping our books and all of those things. And it feels like, well, I'm good at the coordinating thing, but I don't really know the proper way to keep our books or to do these kinds of things. And it's like we don't have to be like experts at everything right away. Like it takes time to learn. And there's also people who their whole job is to teach you how to do that or even to do that for you. And you can eventually hire them to do that kind of thing for you. But just like feeling like it's okay to over time learn how to do things and not having to be an expert right away, if that makes sense. So I don't know. Things are just constantly changing and that's okay. And you're going to continue to learn things and you don't have to be perfect at it right away. And you're going to make mistakes. I think that's a big thing too. I know I'm taking this many different directions, but like
That's
you're
good.
going to make mistakes and that's okay. And you can learn from them. And then I don't know, I talk about it in my classroom all the time. Like mistakes are a good thing because it helps your brain grow. Like it helps our business grow when we make mistakes because we can then do the right thing the next time or learn from that mistake. And so I think that's important and not to get down on ourselves when we're like, we could have done that better or we shouldn't have done that way. So I don't know, long-winded answer to that question.
No, that was perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for because I think, everything that you just said, I think all of those things, if they're not in the right frame, if a person's not in the right frame of mind, I think those are the
Hmm.
things that could convince them that they should not do the thing that they're passionate about. Right. Those are
Right.
the things that could almost make them drown in the negative thoughts, the doubt, because they like you
Hmm.
said, they failed at something. And instead of saying, hey, it's a learning opportunity, they take it personally and say, I can't do this. Or,
Right.
they think they have to be an expert in everything. And so they say, well, I'm not an
Mhm.
expert at the accounting side of things. So
Mhm.
maybe I shouldn't do this at all. When really, like you said, it's like, well, the bottom line is you may just not be very good at that one thing, but you're really
Yeah.
good at the planning, the design, the creativity. So there's ways and paths to work around that. And like you said,
Right.
someone else can do it for you, and then you just take it off your plate completely. But I imagine all
Right.
the things that you just mentioned, I mean, I think that's great advice, because I think those are the things that would convince someone to say, you know what, I tried it. I'm done though, because I can't do X, Y, and Z. Which is sad.
Mhm.
Like, it's sad that so many
Mhm.
people would quit on a dream or a goal of theirs because of those reasons, when really there's some workarounds that
Right.
can help you take care of those things while also moving towards the things that you really love. So
Mhm.
no, that was great advice. Plus, you're the guest anyways. You should be talking more than me anyways. So that was great.
Awesome.
Um, One of the questions I did have for you, just kind of a fun question, was um, obviously you've probably seen some great locations, some fun locations all over the place. But
Yeah.
if location and money was no object, and you had the opportunity to plan a wedding anywhere in the world,
Mhm.
where would
Mhm.
it be?
We talk about this one a lot because we're really big on just like, let's just put our dreams out there. Let's just say them, even if they sound crazy, and let's see what happens. And so I feel like we've talked about this recently, and I think ultimately, right now, our dream would be somewhere in Europe. I think.
Ooh,
I think that would be our goal. And specifically, we kind of have something maybe on the horizon. We're in talks with, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I'm going to say it. We have a client that we're kind of talking to, and it's a little bit far off, like next couple years, but we have our eye on Spain. So, Mallorca, Spain, which is an island off the coast of Spain. That's kind of, we have a few
wow.
venues in mind there that would be really, really cool. And we have a client who's wanting to maybe host their destination wedding there. And so for us, that's a huge dream of ours. We're doing a wedding. I think we're less than 2 weeks away in Palm Springs, which is great. We're super excited for Southern California. We've mostly been sticking to Northern California, Oregon, all over Oregon, and then Washington. We've been West Coast mostly, but not even venturing really into Southern California. So we're really excited to go to Palm Springs. We're bringing our husbands, and it's going to be a fun little vacation. So that will be exciting. But yeah, if we were just talking about anywhere in the world, I feel like maybe Spain would be a fun one right now.
Dang, I feel like we just got a little bit of an exclusive. I appreciate that.
I know. I'm like, I don't know to say that, but we'll go for it because it's not official yet. We're just kind of talking to a client. There's no contract or anything. So that's a dream she has, and we're hoping that she hires us to make that a reality.
That'd be fantastic. That's awesome. And then
Yeah.
also, it's cool that you're taking the trip down to Palm Springs as well, and making it, a couple's friends vacation type thing, because again, one of the questions I had for you, and something that I feel like has come up a lot on this podcast when we talk to business owners, entrepreneurs, anybody who's pursuing something with everything they have. I think the biggest question is, how do you balance? And I keep saying balance, but I heard someone the other day say there's really no true balance when you're trying to
Hmm.
to manage. It's really, you're managing, right? You're managing life outside of the business. You're newly
Hmm.
married. Congrats on that. I don't think I said
Yeah.
that
Thank
before, but
you.
congrats on that. So your brand new marriage, your life outside of the business. You're also a teacher, managing all that. So when you start adding all these things up and you look at the totality of everything that you do, it's a lot. There's a lot of stuff you have
Yeah.
going on. And it's not just stuff that
Right.
just you can do here and there. It's like stuff that takes up a lot of time and a lot of focus and a lot of energy. So
Hmm.
now that you're kind of doing all of these things, and it's after COVID, so it's like full go, right?
Yeah.
How how do you feel like you've been able to manage those things? And when things start getting a little bit too crazy, what are some ways that you are able to kind of slow the breathing down a little bit, and reorganize and refocus on the things that really matter?
Yeah, that's great. I feel like I'm still working on it and figuring it out.
Sure.
I think that ultimately what I really, really appreciate is having like a husband who is so supportive of this passion, like this business that I'm running that is aside from my 9 to 5 that I'm doing. Um, I think that I appreciate his willingness. Like, I think that sometimes our husbands believe in it even more than we do. And obviously we love it and we believe in it, but they are so supportive. And I think that without that, it would be a lot harder because it does take up a lot of our time. It takes up so much of my brain capacity. Like when I get done teaching, my next thing that I'm thinking about is wedding planning and the business. And so I appreciate just how supportive they are and willing to hear us out and just be good listeners and things like that. I do. I think that's like, honestly, I don't know that I have the best advice for it because I think it's something that I struggle with of feeling like I don't want to just be partially giving. I want to try and be 100% in on everything that I'm doing. But when I'm spread really thin, like when I was planning my own wedding and then planning a bunch of other people's weddings and then teaching and, all those things. I was coaching volleyball last year while I was doing all of that. And so it was just like, I feel like I'm only giving part of myself to all of these things. And I think that I had to recognize that in some ways, like something's going to have to give. If I'm going to try and give 100% in all of these areas, if like throw in there, okay, I'm trying to work out every day and I'm trying to do this or do that. Like there's going to be some area that's going to have to give a little bit and it might just be for a season. But I think I had to just be like, take a deep breath and be like, that's okay. I can't be everywhere at the same time and I can't make I think everybody was very supportive. I guess I'm not articulating it well. I just felt like it's okay. Like I don't have to be 100% for all of these people all of the time. Like they understand that I have a lot going on and I have to be okay with that myself because I think I can tend to be a little bit of a perfectionist and be like, well, I wanted to do this today. These three things were on my task list for having hold, and I only got one of them done, and I didn't get the other two. I think having partners that understand that I had a lot going on, I have a lot going on, is great. But then also having that supportive husband. So I don't know what my advice is on that. I think maybe just like recognizing that you can't be everything all at once and being okay with that and trying to tell yourself like it's okay. You just got to do your best and like that's what's important is that you're doing your best. So, I don't know. I'm still working on it. I'm still working on it.
That's great. And I imagine that even the person who's been doing it for 20 years is probably still working on it. So, and I think the
Mhm.
people that are going to be the best moving forward are the people that just admit, like, I'm still working on it, but this is what I tried to do,
Mhm.
rather than just saying, hey, this 100% works. Because it's kind of silly when people say stuff
Right.
like that, because I'm sure it's worked 100% for them, but it doesn't necessarily work for other people. And so the fact that I think it's refreshing hearing that you say you have some thoughts, but it's a work in progress because,
Yeah.
it's always changing. That's the thing I don't think people really consider either, is that you're at this place in your current stage of life. Well, 5 years from
Right.
now, it's going to probably look very different. The business is going to
Totally.
grow. You're different. You're at a different place in your teaching career. And so the mindset's completely different. And so it makes sense that, and I like the fact that you're just cool with it. You're like, hey, I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I'm rolling with it. And that's where we're at. So I appreciate the honesty in that answer. And I
Yeah.
agree. I think having, whatever a person's situation is, whether you're married, boyfriend, girlfriend, family, friends, I think having people around you
Totally.
that are understanding of what you do and are excited for you is super
Yes.
important. I can speak for that for myself, especially with this
Mhm.
podcast. Obviously, this takes away time that I would normally spend with my wife. Now, let's be honest. I think she actually enjoys this hour on Tuesday nights when she's like, you know what? He goes a little late, a little after an hour. It's not a big deal. I get a little peace and quiet.
Right.
That's my thought. She's
Yep.
never said that. I just feel like that's the case. So
You suspect she appreciates a little bit of alone time.
I'm just saying she's never denied it. And so
Okay.
that speaks volumes to me. So, but
Yeah.
to the bigger point, yeah, she's always been super supportive of this. And so, like you were saying, it's nice when you have that person in your corner, because it makes it's one less stress. You know what I mean? If
Absolutely.
you imagine if your husband wasn't supportive and you're trying to
Mhm.
do this thing, but in the back of your mind, he's bothered by what you're doing. He's bothered that you're not
Yeah.
spending more time or whatever the case may be. That would be really difficult, right?
Mhm, mhm, totally. That would be so hard, and I think it would ultimately, like, take away from the joy of, like, doing putting effort into what we're doing because it's always this you're feeling a little bit guilty, and then you're questioning, "Should I even be doing this?" And then you're not even 100% in on that, but you're also maybe if you are focused on trying to be somewhere else, then you're thinking about, the business or whatever. So I think that like having someone who understands, and then definitely I think putting an effort to separate those and not, I mean, for us, it's like I'm not going to be on my laptop designing a wedding when it's our time to be together and to talk about our day and things like that. So trying to definitely have boundaries around it. But I think that he's really supportive if I'm like, hey, I want to get this done and I'm really excited about this new thing that we're doing. Or is it okay if I work on this for another half an hour or whatever? And him having grace with me in that way is obviously really, really helpful. So I think it kind of goes both ways of like, let's set this boundary if we know that it's going to be healthy for us, but also having grace when we're really excited about something and we want to kind of pursue that a little bit more in our day.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, what kind of stuff do you do when it's time to just unwind? Like, what kind of stuff do you enjoy doing, or what kind of stuff do you guys enjoy doing to just say, okay, like you said, put the laptop away, the phone away, let's relax.
Yeah.
What's the normal activity for you guys?
So for us, we're like really big. We hang out with our friends a ton.
Okay,
So it might just look like going over to a friend's house and hanging out and really just being together. If it's just the two of us, I think okay, so I've been talking about this a lot recently. Like my brain being a teacher makes so many decisions a day, like really minuscule decisions where I see like a student doing this and I'm deciding in my own head, am I going to acknowledge that or not? But then also decisions about like curriculum and teaching and all these things. So I've been using this language of like decision fatigue where I have a hard time like when I get home. I don't know that I can like really make a ton of decisions. So we like to do a lot of very like low key things. Like maybe we're just going to watch a show, we're going to hang out, we've been watching Friends lately, which is like one of my favorites, but Tyler had never really been into it. And so I was like, just give it a chance. And he started watching it. And now he's like even
he's
more into
hooked.
it than I am. So he's hooked. Yeah.
Really?
So he's into it. So we've been watching a lot of Friends at night. We also recently learned a new card game, which is really fun. So it's called German Whist. It's kind of like a variation of spades, if you've ever heard of spades or played spades
Sure,
before.
sure.
It's like so spades is usually played with four people, and my grandparents taught us that game, and so we love playing it with them, but we only ever play it with them because I don't know, they're the only ones that know how to play it. But we found German whist, which is like a variation of spades for it's a two-person game. So
Okay.
we have really been into that. So playing a little bit of cards maybe at night before we go to bed, but watching a show, playing cards, those are kind of like our wind down times.
Nice. Okay. Well, you answered. I
Yeah.
was going to ask what show, but you said Friends, and the card game. That's interesting. I'm
Yeah.
terrible at card games. I'm lucky if I could play Go Fish. To be honest with you,
That's
I've always
hilarious.
struggled. Like someone's like, "Hey, let's play hearts." I'm like, "I'm terrible. I'm not going to play this because I don't
Yeah.
understand what's going on. I'm not smart enough for it," which I've accepted. It's fine. But yeah, that's cool that you guys have found something besides just TV that you guys can do just to kind of relax and unwind. And I
Right.
heard, one of our previous guests, Kira, who is a elementary school teacher as well.
Hmm.
She mentioned something when she was on here talking about how, to your point of teachers and how many decisions they make during the day.
Hmm.
You read something, it was similar to like a brain surgeon, which
Hmm.
was pretty wild. I made the
That's
mistake of putting
crazy.
that out on YouTube, that little clip, and a bunch of douchebags decided that they thought that was stupid. I'm like, well, I didn't really ask for your opinion, but note taken. I shouldn't have put this
Right.
clip out there because I'm like, I think she was trying to like make a bigger point than saying that she's doing brain surgery. But
Brains.
I've learned
Yeah.
social media is
Taken out of taken out of context, people get weird. So
especially on
they
YouTube.
just,
We've had
yeah,
some comments
yeah.
on YouTube. It's like, I don't know, you guys need something better to do. So,
Right.
anyways,
Yeah.
that's not the point of tonight's conversation. So,
Right.
um, I know I've kept you for a little while. I want to make sure I'm respectful of your time because I know you have a
You're
ton of stuff
fine.
to do. One of the things I should have mentioned earlier was that I have actually been to one of the weddings that you guys put on. It was Maddie's wedding. So
Yes.
Shireen's daughter, who Shireen, I'm sure you're listening. I know you and I have texted a couple of times about you being on the show, and I'm still waiting. So anytime you want to come on the show, you're more than
Gotta get
welcome.
Reen. We gotta get Reen on here.
I've been trying for. I'm gonna be honest with you, not to go take like a sidetrack too much, but she is like a celebrity at this point on this podcast. Whereas like if I could get one person, who would it be? I'm like Shireen Groover. You would be the
Yes.
one person I want on this podcast. besides athletes, celebrities, no, I don't want them. Just Shireen, come on my podcast. So
All
that
right,
was my
come on,
plea. Thank you,
Reen.
Shireen. Yeah.
Yes, we'll get her. I'm gonna text her. I'm gonna be like, you have to go on.
Just tell her it was fun. Even if you didn't, if even if you have not been enjoying this, just lie to her. Tell her it's been
Oh, I
great.
sure have.
Okay,
I don't need
good.
to lie. I will tell her. I will be honest and I will tell her you need to go on.
Perfect. I appreciate that. But anyways, that's beside the point. I didn't mean to go down that tangent. I've been to one of your guys' events, and it was awesome. And I'm not just saying that because you were on the show. Even driving away from the event that night, wedding that night, talking to my wife, I don't think we would have ever guessed that you guys were fairly new at doing this. Like it just had that
Mhm.
level of professionalism and quality. And so I should have mentioned that earlier that I have actually been to one
Thank
of your
you.
weddings, and I can vouch that they're dope. They do a great job.
Thank
Um,
you. That
yeah,
means a lot.
absolutely. But that being said, though, was that again? I don't know if you feel comfortable saying, but I'm sure you do. You guys are all close.
Yeah.
Was it weird? Like, because I know you were in the wedding. I'm sure
Yeah.
you had some hand in planning it too. Was that weird being
Mhm.
like doing that for one of your best friends? And was that the first time you guys had done that for one of your friend circle, or was that not?
No, it's not. So
Okay.
we've done it quite a few times. I will say that it's probably one of the first times that we've coordinated for someone we're so close to. So Maddie was a little bit unique in that she had a super, super small bridal party. So even though Corey and Sierra are some of her closest friends, I think it was just me and Hannah. So me and her cousin Hannah were the bridal party. So it was very, very small. And then that freed up Corey and Sierra to really like be a part of the day and the coordination and the planning. So I did have a hand in planning it. And I think that honestly, it's really nice when we get to plan things for friends that we're so close to because we know them. And so we're able to kind of put together a design and help them come up with things that really reflect who they are or who them and then their now spouse are. Because I think one of our goals when we design a wedding is for the people who attend the wedding to feel like it was a reflection of the couple, not just like, oh, this is something that I've seen, a bunch of times, or this looks just like every other wedding I've ever been to. We want to definitely try and like pull aspects of who that couple is and put that into their stationery or into their design, into, different parts of their day. And so I think that when we get the opportunity to do it for someone that we know so well, it's really, really fun. And I think ultimately we get to know all of our clients when we're working that closely with them. But for her, it was just really, really special. So it wasn't weird. I think maybe for the girls, it was like who were coordinating it, they were like, oh my gosh, it's our best friend. It's not just any other wedding. So it's like they're thinking of it from a coordination perspective, but also trying to take it in for what it is. Like our best friend is getting married, and that's a really big deal. So I think maybe trying to balance like recognizing what is happening and being in the moment for her as a friend, but then also managing all the behind the scenes stuff could be a little bit harder. But no, I don't think that it was weird or anything like that. It was the best. We love planning for people that we know really, really well.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to, I know I saw it today that I wanted to ask you about because I think it's kind of a fun, creative thing that I think I understand, but I want to hear it, from you. You guys
Yeah.
posted a picture, I think today or yesterday, I think it was today, of the guest book table, and it had a
Yeah.
phone. So
Hmm.
tell me a little bit about the phone because it sounds really cool and it sounds like a unique thing, and it sounds like it's fairly popular with your clients. But tell me a little bit about that and what that whole phone is at the guest book table.
Yeah. So we're suckers. So I do love tradition, and I think like doing things traditionally is cool. But even more so, we love thinking outside of the box, and we love things that are different. So one of our very favorite things to recommend to people is coming up with some kind of unique guest book that's not just like a book that you're never going to look at that's going to sit on a shelf in your house, but trying to come up with something creative. So for instance, some things that we've done in the past are like we've had it couples where the groom plays the guitar. And so we've actually gotten like a white guitar and then people sign the guitar and that's their guest book and it can hang in their house or they can play it and it's like super fun and interactive. We've also done weddings where like the couple's really huge on games. They love playing games and that's a part of their relationship, kind of like the question you asked me, like, what do you guys do together? And so we'll have like a Jenga guest book where it's like pieces of a game that people sign, and then every time they go to pull that out, which is something that you would pull out probably a lot more than like the casual, like a book that's on a shelf, you probably pull that out often and then get a reminder of like the people who are a part of your really special day. So this specific phone is a company called After the Tone, which we worked with quite a bit, and it is so amazing. So they send basically you, they have a bunch of different colors of these super old phones, and you can you request the color according to obviously your color palette and things like that. And then they send you the phone just a few days before your wedding, and you set it out on that day. And there's just a button that, you know, your coordinator or somebody needs to press to turn it on. And then instead of just coming up and signing a book, the people who are attending your wedding pick it up and they can leave you basically a voicemail. So leave a message after the tone. That's where the name After the Tone comes from. And so there's like some instructions that play when you pick it up. It says leave a message for the bride and groom or leave a message for the couple or whatever. And then you basically just get to talk. And then when you hang it up, it pauses. And it's just running all night. So whoever picks it up gets to leave a message. And then basically you send the phone back into After the Tone. They process, I don't know the technical side of it, but they take all those audio messages, put them into one, and then they send it to you. And for years to come, you just have these audio messages from all of the people who were there on your wedding day. And it's just a really special, unique thing. It obviously makes, like you were mentioning, we posted a picture of it. It's a great photo opportunity. Really cute when people are picking them up, and we just watch people leave messages and they're just so excited. And it's just really, it's like a unique twist on a guest book. You still get to, you can hear people. And I think I've heard some testimonies of people who are like, my grandma left a message and she like passed away not long after that. And so it's something that I treasure so much, like hearing her voice and things like that. So we've heard some cool things like that. But ultimately what we just love is like a unique, non-traditional guest book. And I think that you could also pair it. Like we've had weddings where we've done After the Tone, and then there's also a traditional guest book that people sign with pictures in it if you want it for your coffee table or something like that. So I'm not saying that traditional guest books are the worst, because I had one at my wedding, but we do
Sure.
love like thinking outside of the box, and the After the Tone is just a great way for you to do that. It's just a little twist.
No, I think that's great. And it's a great way to connect with your guests. Like you said, the white guitar, the Jenga board,
Mm-hmm.
it's just another point of connection. And I think it's another
Yeah.
point where it shows how much the wedding planner cares about the couple who's
Mm-hmm.
getting married and making that day special. So I think
Right.
that's great. And like you said, nothing wrong with the traditional guest book if that's what you
Right.
want, but not
Mm-mm.
everybody wants it. And so having
Right.
that those other options available is pretty cool. You know, I forgot to tell you
Totally.
this. Um, you know, at our wedding, we had a little bit of an issue because you know I feel like nowadays the photo booth is always a big thing, and it's at most places.
Yeah.
And so
Mm-hmm.
we found this company. I forgot how we found them, and I wish I could remember your name because I would call you out right now, but I can't. You're lucky. And so
Shoot.
yeah, and I wish I could remember, but we had it in one location. It was kind of central to where the reception was. And obviously,
Mm-hmm.
Rachel and I were busy talking to people, doing all that stuff. Well, we found out later that for some reason, somebody decided to move it to a different location. Now we had it in a specific spot because it was local, you know, local to where everybody
Yeah.
was at. They tucked it
Mm-hmm.
by behind the bathrooms, like behind the bathrooms. And so we're looking through the photos they sent us, like, why? That's weird. I thought this would be super popular. Barely anybody
Right.
did it. And then come to find out, some moron decided to move it. And so it was like, oh, and then I tried to get like I spent like a couple weeks after that trying to get a hold of them, and I never could. But it was very disappointing because I'm like, this kind of sucks that you guys did this. But it's, you know,
Yeah.
again, if you guys hire having to hold or haven't hold, dang, you know what? I've been doing really good not saying have and to hold, and I finally
Yeah.
messed it up at the finish line. Have and hold
That's okay.
events.
Yeah.
You want to deal with that because they care about the details and they would think through all these things. Unlike the person who moved it. I'm not saying it was the wedding planner. I'm just saying someone messed up. It wasn't anybody in our
Yeah.
family. Someone messed up. That's all I'm gonna say.
That's a
Felt good.
fact. And that would not happen at a have and hold wedding. We would make sure that it was in a very accessible spot. And it's like money that you put into it. So it's really frustrating when something that you have paid for gets wasted. And so that's our goal, to advocate for you and also to make sure that what you have paid for gets used.
That's all I wanted to point out.
For sure.
I feel better getting that
I
off my
love it.
chest. It's been a couple of years since I've talked about that, and
Yep.
I had a little PTSD for a second
It
there.
was, that was weighing on you the whole podcast, huh? You were just waiting to share that
Pretty
story.
much. I'm gonna bring you around to this at some point.
Hmm.
But again, it was like, again, it was one of those things that we were really excited about, and kind of like these, these little touches that you guys put on your
Yeah.
weddings, and they didn't come through, and so
Yeah.
it was just a bummer. But
Yeah.
anyways, I feel better. I'm not going to talk about that
Good.
anymore. So,
Good.
anyways, Ashton, and I really mean this when I say this, and I promise you, I've said this for the 5 years that I've been podcasting. I would only say this if I meant it. You're really good at this. So if at any point
Thank
you want to take over for Deb because she just decides not to show up anymore, just let me know and I'll bump
you.
Deb.
Okay.
Not a problem.
All right.
Don't
I
talk to
got a
her
spot.
first. You don't talk to her first
Okay.
because you probably will like her. She's a great person. Um,
Okay.
so just pretend she's awful, and if you want to
Uh-huh.
bump her, and you have a spot
Okay.
because you're really good at this. And I think this was a
Thank
fun
you.
conversation for me. Hopefully, it was fun for you.
Really.
And all
Yeah.
that being said, where can people follow you? Websites, social media, all of that.
Yeah. Well, I'll start by just saying thank you so much for having me on. It's so fun and it's just been a blast. And being able to talk about something I'm so passionate about is really fun. And it's kind of fun because often I'm just talking about teaching with my people at school and I'm just talking about weddings with my clients. So this is kind of fun because I got to kind of mix a lot of things that I do. So I
Oh,
really
good.
appreciated that and your questions. So yes, social media I think is the best place. Instagram is probably the best place to follow us. Have and Hold Event Co. is the Instagram handle. It's kind of our long name. We typically just call it Have and Hold for short. But we also like no hard feelings on to having to hold because people call us that all the time, and I get it because that's kind of like the formal to having to hold
Sure.
as long as you both shall live. That's where the name was taken from. So we don't hold that against people when they make that mistake. But it is
Thank you.
have
I
and
did
hold
practice though.
event code.
I
Yeah,
was
that's
bummed. I'm like,
okay.
I cannot, the two things I can't mess up. I can't mess up your name because, like I told you
Yeah,
off air, I've known you so long as Ashton Butler. I'm like, that's just going to naturally come
yeah.
out. So do not do that. We were fine there. And then don't say to having to hold. And of course, like I
Yeah,
said, I fumbled the ball at the goal line. I was about to
I
score and
know, so close.
so close. I'm disappointed in myself.
No, that's okay. And I've been really working hard too because this is the first year I'm Mrs. Renn at school and not Miss Butler because I've been teaching as Miss Butler for quite a while now. And so even I sometimes I'll joke in class and I'll be like, "Oh, you're gonna ask me, oh, Miss Butler, what do I do?" And really, I'm trying to be careful to not do that. And I've already done it twice this year. We've been in school for 3 weeks, so I've done that twice, and the kids kind of look at me because my students who are in my class now don't know me as that. They've only known me as Mrs. Wren. So they're kind of like, who are you? How are you messing up your own name? But I'm like, sorry guys, it's new. So
That's
even
funny.
if you made that mistake, which I'm impressed you didn't, but even if you did, there would be no hard feelings because I'm making that mistake myself.
It's a tough transition. Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
funny for Rachel. She's a teacher. And so anytime a student brings, not anytime, I take that back, not anytime, but a lot of times when a
Mhm.
student brings a pass to her class and they don't know her, they take it to the Asian teacher and they assume, oh, this must be
Oh my
Mrs.
gosh.
Takimoto. And she's like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
I'm the white
That's
one over
me over
here. That's
here.
me. And they're like, what? It's like, well, I'm married to a Japanese guy. That's how it happened.
Yeah.
Like, why do I have to explain this so much? But she's like,
Yeah.
every time they take it to her, it's like, nope. And then she doesn't have to hear what happened. She knows when she sees that point. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
she took it to the wrong person.
It was a
So
name thing. That's
it's a
so
name thing.
funny. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
So,
name
but
thing.
yeah,
Oh,
anyways, you guys
funny.
make sure you guys follow. If you have any
Yeah.
events coming up, make sure you reach out to them. They have a great website. I was checking that out before we hopped on here. All the packages are laid out there, and then make sure you follow them on Instagram too, because it's just, even if you don't plan on getting married, I mean, or maybe you have a divorce on the way and you plan on getting married again, whatever the case is, just check it out, follow, just so you're always ready and you can see all the great stuff
Yeah.
that they're doing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And we thank you. And we didn't touch on this at all, but like we do offer events. So if you have like a bachelorette, bridal shower, like anything like that, just a birthday party, like we design all events, not just weddings. So you can let us know if any of you guys out there have
yes.
any events that you need some help with. That's what we're here for.
Before we get out of here, have you done a birthday party?
We've done a couple birthday parties. Yeah.
Nice. What
Yeah.
age?
Super fun. I think our first one was like 3 and our second one was maybe like 7. I'm forgetting. They were kind of towards the beginning. Since then we've done more like bridal showers. We've done some really fun like bridal tea and things like that. But yeah, it was one like younger 3 and then maybe like a 7-year-old.
Okay. I should have
Yeah.
asked those questions. That's like a whole nother podcast we could probably talk
I
about.
know. I know.
It's a very different thing from a wedding. So yes. So that being
Yeah.
said, any events you guys have, make sure
Mhm.
you check them out and get in contact with them. They are awesome.
Okay.
So Ashtyn, thank you so much for taking some time to
Awesome.
chat with me. It was good seeing you.
Yeah.
And
You
we
too.
will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the show. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you like it, share it, and hit the subscribe button to get a new episode every week. We'll see you next time on the Connectable podcast.